Sir Walter Elliot of Kellynch Hall in Somersetshire was a man who, for his own amusement, never took up any book but the Baronetage. There he found occupation for an idle hour and consolation in a distressed one. There his faculties were roused into admiration and respect by contemplating the limited remnant of the earliest patents. There any unwelcome sensations arising from domestic affairs changed naturally into pity and contempt as he turned over the almost endless creations of the last century. And there, if every other leaf were powerless, he could read his own history with an interest which never failed. Hello everyone, my name is Daria, welcome back to my channel. And today I bring to you all the third installment in my Battle of the Austen Adaptations series. Today we're going to be talking about my second favorite Austen novel of all time, Persuasion. But before we go any further, I want to thank Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Skillshare is an online learning platform that was curated specifically with creatives like you and I in mind. There is such a wide and diverse topics to choose from. You can take classes in illustration, graphic design, interior design, leadership and management. Really anything that you could think of, I guarantee you, there's some class related to it on Skillshare. Some of you may want to discover a new skill, some of you may want to deep dive into a passion you've always had. No matter what your reasoning, Skillshare is definitely the place for you. I recently took Emily Henderson's class entitled Styling Your Space, Creative Tips and Techniques for Interior Design. The class just gave me so much clarity and allowed me to see that there were some things in my room that just didn't really reflect who I am. And I had so many new ideas about how to make my space reflect my personality. Skillshare is a place made entirely for learning, which means that there are no ads and they are constantly putting up new premium classes for you all to check out. And the first 1,000 people to click the link down below will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare so you can explore your creativity. Now, let's hop back into this Battle of the Austen Adaptations. I feel like Anne Elliot is just vastly different from a lot of Austen's previous heroines. I feel like Anne is often overlooked for heroines like Lizzie Bennet, who is smart, outspoken, strong-willed, or even Emma Woodhouse, who is ridiculous, ostentatious, vain. And Anne Elliot, as a main character, she's quiet. She's actually not the type of woman that one would expect to be the romantic heroine of a novel. As the title of the novel suggests, Anne is a person who is easily swayed. She listens to others, she cares about the opinions of others, and she often allows others to trample all over her just to keep the peace. In any other story, Anne would be a secondary character, background, the friend of our heroine who is meant to serve as a cautionary tale and give advice. And that, funnily enough, is precisely why I think she makes for such a fascinating and refreshing main character. And Persuasion itself, I think, holds a dear place to me because it also shows the development of Austen's writing. It was her last fully written published novel before her death. And in this novel, I feel like it's just very apparent how much Austen has grown as a writer. I think it's so fitting that she tackled this extremely hard subject matter of second chances, second chance romances. And I think that Anne Elliot was the right final heroine for her to write about. Now for this Battle of the Austen Adaptations, I could only get my hands on 3 adaptations. I have a feeling that this list is going to be a wee bit controversial. I myself was so torn, I agonized over this list for so many days, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go ahead and start with our number 3 pick. Coming in at last place, we have the 1971 miniseries. Now, the first thing I want to say about this adaptation is that it is extremely accurate to the book. Given its 4-hour length, it was basically able to include every single small detail and dialogue from the novel. And believe it or not, this actually made me heavily dislike this adaptation. I firmly believe that a book and its film adaptations should have differences between the two of them. What is fresh, exciting, and entertaining in a novel is not necessarily going to be the same on a screen. And in Persuasion especially, it is a novel about a woman, Anne, who is such an internal character. She's not active, she's not aggressive, she's the opposite, she's passive, she's quiet, she's observant. And in the novel, it is fascinating to be inside her mind, to be inside her world. But the same can't be said in the show. I also think that the reason the show dragged on so much is because I just really didn't enjoy the actors' performances, nor was there anything about the show that really caught my eye. All the actors were just incredibly bland, for lack of a better way to describe it. The production, it just felt very staged, clunky. There's little to no music or score. There is basically no creative camera movement or cinematography. And I've learned from previous commenters during my Emma adaptation video that apparently this is just how productions were staged in the 70s and 80s. And so yes, it is not their fault that their production is not very exciting. But at the same time, I don't know what you want me to do about that. Like, it's just boring. It's gonna get last place. Like, I'm sorry. There were so many times that I just forgot that Anne was the main character. I forgot where she was in a scene. Everyone was just boring in this adaptation. There was no spice, no flavor. The delivery was so bland and monotone. And some other specific gripes that I had was the introduction to this show. Once again, it is just verbatim what is in the book. And in the book, like you heard at the beginning of this video, it is just Sir Walter looking at his own baronetage, his own lineage, talking about his heirs, his home. It's just like a laundry list and data sheet of his life. And in the book, it's actually really funny to see him talk about these different aspects of his life, the different people in his life. But in the show, it's just really awkward introduction and exposition. It's just Sir Walter really awkwardly introducing everybody. And like, yes, it's accurate to the book, but remember what I said, sometimes it's better to not be accurate to the book, and this is one of those instances. It was just so weird. I also want to talk about Captain Wentworth and Anne. Obviously, they are the driving force of this novel, the main couple, and I have to say that I didn't really feel a lot of tension between the two of them. I think if anybody was just watching this show and didn't know anything about Persuasion, they would not know that those two had any feelings toward each other, like at all. Especially on Captain Wentworth's end. Like, I know in the book, when he first runs into Anne again, he is like purposefully trying to pretend like he doesn't give a shit about her and can be really rude, but it's very obvious to Anne and to the reader that he does give a shit. But like, in the show, you couldn't tell at all. Like, this man acted like he legitimately did not know anything about her. I have to say, however, I will give this adaptation one compliment, which is that I have never laughed so hard like I did when Louisa fell off the steps in this version. I lost my mind. Once again, I think it's like the production and the way it was shot, like, you can tell that she only fell like a foot and then she just like passed out. It was so funny. So now we have reached my number 1 and number 2 spots. And I really thought that once I sat down in front of this camera, I would have an idea, a firm idea of which adaptation I wanted to put in which place. And I don't.
2 hours later.
You know what? I've decided. I decided that I can do what I want. It's my list. So, coming in at number 2, we have 1995. Okay, this is the adaptation that I think objectively is the more accurate one. The one that I think the book lovers predominantly will really love. I think that the actors who play Wentworth and Anne are seriously, like, just those characters walking straight off the page. Especially the actress who plays Anne. I knew from the very start that this was just perfect casting when she says Wentworth's name for the first time.
Brother of Mrs. Croft, bless me, what was his name? Anne, you'll recall.
It's Wentworth. Wentworth.
Wentworth? That's right, Wentworth.
Just the way that she says his name in that moment allows the audience to immediately understand what he means to her and immediately comprehend the history that they have. And Wentworth is just so charming. You can just tell that this is a man that people gravitate towards, that people want to be around. And I think he did a really great job portraying Wentworth's anger and resentment towards Anne without making it so obvious, if you know what I mean. For example, when they're at the dinner table, he's talking about being in the Navy. You can tell that he is kind of directly speaking to Anne without being so direct in front of everybody. But you wouldn't know it if you didn't know the history between them. Like, only the audience can really tell what's going on, and Anne, of course.
I was extremely keen at the time, in the year 6, to be at sea. I was extremely keen. Badly wanted to be doing something.
Well, naturally you did. What should a young fellow like you do ashore for half a year together? When a man has no wife, he wants to be afloat again.
Yes, well, I had no wife in the year 6.
A scene that the adaptation chose to include, which I absolutely loved and I think is one of the most comical scenes in the entire novel, is that sort of montage where all the Musgroves are coming to Anne and complaining to her. Mary is complaining about Mrs. Musgrove, Mrs. Musgrove is complaining about Mary, Charles is complaining about Mary, Louisa's complaining about Mary. Like, everybody is just unloading onto Anne, and she just increasingly gets fed up and tired. It's hilarious while also showing that Anne is this character who everybody goes to and just unloads all their problems onto, and they don't really see her like as her own person. Like, she's just there for you to like bounce your grievances off of. Like, she's just there to listen. She's not really there to act or like have an opinion or do anything, basically. It says a lot about how other people perceive Anne and how Anne allows herself to be treated by others. I think Anne and Wentworth are really like the highlights of this cast. Not to say that the other actors aren't talented and, you know, aren't good at portraying their characters, but I think when I compare them to their 2007 counterparts, they're not as memorable. One scene that I really liked that they added to this adaptation, like I said, adding things, changing things is key to a great adaptation, especially when they help progress the storyline. One scene that I really liked that they added was the scene in which Anne kind of stands up for herself and goes up against Lady Russell. In the novel, Anne sort of sticks up for herself by finally choosing Captain Wentworth. It's not really like a direct confrontation like it is during this argument and conversation. I think it was a really good moment. I think it was like a full circle showing that Anne is no longer going to be persuaded and swayed by Lady Russell's opinion. Despite the fact that she cares for her, it doesn't mean that she always knows what's best for her. Only Anne can know that truly. Another like teeny tiny small detail that like you blink and you miss it that I really liked in this adaptation is when Wentworth is overhearing Anne and Harville speaking, and Anne says that beautiful line about women loving longest even when all hope is lost. I don't know exactly what he drops, but he drops something. He's just like so startled by it, and you can tell like that's the moment where he knows like, okay, I have a chance. Let me write this letter. Let me tell her how I really feel. I just thought it was really sweet. I honestly, like, I don't have a bad thing to say about this adaptation. I think it's really good. I think that you could easily put it in the #1 spot, but I didn't. Sorry, don't kill me, don't come for me. Should I not be doing this? I don't know. You know what? No, we're gonna move on. I already filmed it, so we're moving on. And now, moving on to our #1 spot, the best Persuasion adaptation, in my biased opinion, Persuasion 2007. Let me just start off by saying that I love Sally Hawkins. I love this woman. I think she's one of the most talented actresses working right now. It's just all in the eyes. Like, you look at her eyes in any given scene and you know exactly what she's feeling. You know exactly what Anne is feeling in that moment. And even the tone of her voice, like when she speaks with Wentworth, it's like she can't properly get out her words. The heartbreak, the anguish, all of it is just apparent just in the way that she talks.
Oh, Captain Wentworth, this is my elder sister, Anne.
We are acquainted.
Really? But Anne has never said a word about it. It was a long time ago. You were at school.
I think in this version, Wentworth's anger, resentment, and just pain is on display more so than it ever was in the other adaptations. I think it is very obvious that he still is angry towards her, like the way he delivers his lines, the way that he looks at her. And I don't know, like I kind of like it. I kind of do. Because as much as his anger is apparent, it means that also his love for her is still very much apparent as well. When you're reading a novel, you are able to enter into these characters' heads, especially because Austen uses free and direct discourse. At any one time, we are slipping in and out of different characters' heads, learning how they feel, what their internal state is. In a movie, it's much harder to get that across, especially when you have characters like Anne and Wentworth who are more reserved and internal characters. So I think it works. It works that they are more expressive on screen, and yes, it adds to the drama, but I think we're all a fan of a little melodrama. One thing I loved this adaptation did was the diary entries and the fourth wall breaking from Anne. I think it was such a clever narrative device that they used. Anne is the kind of person who holds back her feelings. She never says what she really feels, what she really wants, especially in front of other people, in front of her family. So every time she looks into the camera, she is like letting the audience in on how she really feels. She might say something to others, but she'll look to us and we know that she doesn't agree with what's happening or she doesn't want to be doing this. And because Sally Hawkins, like I mentioned, is so expressive with just her eyes, sometimes it is just gut-wrenching. Making eye contact with her through the screen, seeing heartbreak and anguish and just like torture on her face. I really love the muted colors and tones in the cinematography. It perfectly replicates Anne and who she is, how she's feeling. And then of course, the cinematography will start to change. Light comes in, color comes in when she goes to Bath, when Wentworth comes back. When they finally are together at the end of the film, she's glowing, and so the world around her is also glowing and bright and full of happiness. So I mentioned before that in the 1995 version, I didn't really feel like any of the side characters were anything to write home about. I definitely don't feel that way about this version. I loved all the supporting characters, and I don't think that any actors in previous adaptations embodied them quite so well. I need to give some specific shout outs here because there were so many standout characters. First, Tobias Menzies as Mr. Elliot. This man is a godsend to any period drama watchers. You know this man just bodies every single role that he does. He's just so good as Mr. Elliot. He's slimy, yet charming, enticing, yet repulsive. He does it all, and he toes that line so well. Next, I want to shout out Amanda Hale as Mary Musgrove. This woman, she was so ridiculous in this role. Like, Mary is a funny character just sort of on her own, but my god, I always laughed whenever she said anything. Like, she is so fucking annoying and so infuriating, but I also just have to laugh at the delivery because it's just comedic gold. Also, Anthony Head, or Heed, however you pronounce it, as Sir Walter Elliot. He had so little screen time, yet he stole the show every time. Once again, ridiculous character. Absolutely ridiculous. So hyperbolic with everything that he says. I laughed every time. Like, oh man, the supporting cast were incredible, incredible. All right, so now let's talk about some additions, some changes, some lines that were even moved around in this adaptation, and why I think they were actually beneficial to the storyline overall. The first one I want to talk about is like seemingly a very small detail, but I personally love it. When everyone is walking across this log, when they are on the way to go visit the haters, Anne falls. What I love about that scene is that right before, when all the ladies are walking across this log, you see that no one stops to help Anne. No one thinks of Anne. It says a lot about how other people view her. They take her for granted. And so when she falls, who is the person who shows up? Who is the person who doesn't take her for granted, who does think of her? It's Wentworth. Also, another small detail, but Wentworth just like dragging Anne and then like hoisting her onto the carriage so that she doesn't have to walk anymore and can take the carriage home with his sister. It will never not be funny. Like, I always laugh. He has no expression on his face. He just like takes her, puts her on, and lets her go. Like it's nothing. And she is so flustered. I love that scene. There's also the addition of two conversations between Wentworth and Harville having to do with Louisa and the fact that her and her parents expect him to propose to her and marry her. Now in the novel, we have no idea what goes down between Benwick, Louisa, and Wentworth back at Uppercross. We are with Anne the whole time, and we find out when she finds out. And I don't know about you guys, I'm nosy as hell. I wanted to know, like, what exactly went down. So I like the addition of these scenes. And I just love the way that he speaks about Anne in these conversations with Harville.
Never have I met her equal in good sense or sweetness of character. She's perfection itself. I've never loved any of her. We are talking now of Anne Elliot. Of course, who else?
Another thing that this version does is that it takes a lot of like the most dramatic scenes in the book and just like hams up the drama, turns it the hell up. And I love it. I love it. For example, when Wentworth goes to that concert and sees Elliot and Anne together, he gets pissed, he leaves, and then he says that line of like, there's nothing worth me staying for. And they use a lot of the same dialogue, but it's just like so dramatic because he like gets up immediately and then she like runs after him, like books it after him. And it's just way more dramatic than in any of the other versions. And I love it. I love melodrama. I really do. And the absolute chaos and calamity of that like final like 10-15 minutes of the film where Anne is like running after Wentworth, and then as she's running over there, her friend Miss Smith shows up and tells her the truth about Mr. Elliot, and then she goes over there, she runs into Harville, Harville gives her the letter, she reads the letter, she's like, oh my god, he loves me back. She's running to try to find him. Then she runs into like his sister, and then she's like, oh, he actually went over there to find you, and then she runs all the way back. It's so dramatic. And honestly, I don't know about the etiquette of the times, but I think a woman like sprinting all over Bath, I don't know if that would be very well received, but I loved it. I love the kind of like inversion of like the guy running after the girl trope, except now it's like switched around. I love it. You're so invested. Your heart is beating, it's pumping. You're like, yes, girl, run after him, go get him. And then I love that the camera just focuses on her and just her face. And we zoom in closer and closer, and she won't break eye contact with him for anything. And she is just responding to that part in the letter where he says, just give me a look and I'll know. And she's giving him that look. The kiss between the two of them, the way that it takes her an eternity to reach his lips. And this man is not gonna help her out at all. Like she's craning her neck to get to this man's lips, and he is just standing there like, come on, you can work for it. I've waited this long. You can wait a little while before I kiss you. It's so funny. And then when they do kiss, it's so cute. It's like, it was worth the wait. It really is. And then one last thing, one last change at the end. He buys Kellynch Hall for her, which, like, I don't know how that works. I don't think it was possible because, like, doesn't Mr. Elliot, doesn't he have, like, a claim over it? I'm pretty sure, like, the entire book, like, they're talking about how it's gonna go to him. So I don't know how Wentworth managed to buy it, but you know what? That scene is super cute when they're dancing on the lawn, so I don't even care about the logic of it. Cute. It's just cute. I just think this version is fun. It makes me feel the same way that I felt reading the book. Like, the intense excitement, the bated breath, like all that I felt while reading Persuasion, I feel that with this adaptation. If you preferred 1995 over 2007, totally valid. Not gonna harp on you for that. If you prefer 1971 over 1995 and 2007, then I have questions for you. So that is it for me today, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this third installment of Battle of the Austen Adaptations. If you did enjoy it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below. Go ahead and let me know what your favorite adaptation is, why it is your favorite. I hope, I pray, I plan on getting the fourth installment of the series out to you guys sooner rather than later. If you guys want to find me or follow me anywhere else on social media, all the links will be down below. I love you all so very dearly, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. What the fuck was that? What can I say? Sir Walter Elliot. Holy fuck, okay. Let's be gone. Sir Walter Elliot of Kellynch Hall in Somerset. Oh, these this is so hard. Oh man. It's actually getting fucking annoying right now. It's getting annoying.